really unusual, okay? The DOJ just asked the Southern District of New York, which is supposed to be the crown jewel of the satellite attorneys general offices in the country, to dismiss the case against New York's mayor without prejudice, which is essentially directing them to say, you screwed this case up. You did a bad job, or you did the right job for the wrong reasons, and now you're going to admit it. You are directed, as authorized by the Attorney General, to dismiss the pending charges in the United States v. Adams, and the matter shall be reviewed by the confirmed U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York following the November 2025 mayoral election, based on consideration of all relevant factors. The Justice Department has reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based, which are issues on which we defer to the U.S. Attorney's Office at this time. So here's what they just said. You're going to dismiss it because we believe you did it the wrong way and for the wrong reasons. And after the mayoral election, assuming Adams runs and whether he wins or loses, then the Attorney General and the deputy one, who's in the Southern District at that time, will review the case at that time. Never heard of anything like this before. It's a huge black eye for the Southern District. Not that anybody really cares. What does it mean for Adams, legally and politically? Former New York City prosecutor Paul Callan and NewsNation correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera. Let's do law and then politics, because both of you can speak to both. It's good to have you both. Thank you, brothers. Thank you for doing it on short notice. Paul, legally, does this mean what I think, which is leave him alone for now? We'll look at it again after the election.
Well, that's what they're trying to get away with, but this is completely bizarre. I've never seen something like this attempted in a federal court. Now, bear in mind, the assistant U.S. attorneys in the Southern District have to agree to go along with this. And they have the right to resign from office. Remember the Saturday night massacre that happened during the Nixon administration, when they said in good conscience, I can't do something like that? You may have a Saturday night massacre here where none of these assistants are willing to go into court and move for dismissal. You then have to appear in front of a federal judge. And by the way, it happens to be a federal judge who was selected by Mr. Trump, which probably helps his position. However, federal judges are very independent, and this federal judge who's had the case is going to say, why in the world are you walking away from this case? And if you want to do this, you have the right to pardon the mayor. You don't have to have the court and the current Southern District agree to your conditions. And there are bizarre conditions listed in the letter that was sent.
But why would the judge fight it? If the prosecutor doesn't want to bring the case, or they're saying, we've been told not to bring this case in the interest of justice, what is the judge's, what's the judge's motivation or upside?
Well, Chris, in state court, a judge would really not get involved at this level. But federal courts are different. When you settle a federal case, the federal judge has to agree to the settlement. He also has to agree to the dismissal. However, in the end, someone's got to prosecute the case. And if the prosecutors are refusing to present evidence, the defendant wins. So the federal judge is going to stall it if he wants to, but in the end, he won't be able to stop it. So you are correct about that.
All right, so let's talk about the politics, because that's what this is really about. Obviously, this letter was drafted by somebody other than Trump, Geraldo. We both know how he speaks and how he writes. So they're trying to do what he wants here. And it comes at the same time that Adams, there's a story moving now in a New York tabloid that Adams has been telling officials under his power to not openly criticize Trump. I don't know why he would say that out loud, knowing that they were going to rat on him about it. But what do you think the political play is here for Trump and the plus minus for Adams?
Well, for Trump, it shows that yet again his influence is undeniable and so formidable that you can't stand up to it. And it was pretty clear that President Trump wanted Eric Adams to be free and clear of these charges. But I think that two quick things. One is that the case against Mayor Adams, in my opinion, was a lame case. It stunk to high heaven to me. I was shocked that Damian Williams and the Southern District brought this prosecution for upgrades on Turkish Airlines. I mean, I've been upgraded by are they going to come and arrest me now? When someone comes, Geraldo, come from coach and sit up front. We got an empty seat. Come on, mayor of the greatest city of New York in the world, you're sitting in coach. Come sit up front. They're going to give you an upgrade. That's a felony now? And to try and draw a quid between that and building the Turkish consulate? Doesn't Turkey get to have a consulate near the United Nations? I think that that is preposterous. And I think that in Adams' case, maybe he played it. And I think the voters of New York can judge whether he played the immigration issue as his trump card to get this pass from the president. I don't know about that, but I am absolutely delighted, even though I am myself conflicted, because I like Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, who is the most formidable challenger against Eric Adams in the Democratic primary. I like both these men very much. I go back years with Mayor Adams when he was a cop. Of course, Andrew Cuomo was a terrific governor of New York State. I can't tell you how many cop funerals I've been to with Governor Cuomo. I think that what you have here is all kinds of politics bubbling up, but this is a case I'm glad. Let Eric Adams be Eric Adams.
And just for everybody at home, to state the obvious, Andrew's my brother, okay? And yes, I have been outspoken on this show that I didn't like the initial indictment against Adams. Paul and I have talked about it. Geraldo and I have talked about it. And I didn't know how it was connected to the guys around him. Those cases look pretty suspicious. Damian Williams rarely shoots and misses, but I have echoed Geraldo's analysis in the past. Is my brother going to run? I don't know. Ask him. He's friendly with Adams, and he has not been running around about how this case was such a damning case for Adams either. However, if we're going to look at the politics that have nothing to do with whether Adams, who runs against Adams, if anybody, Paul and Geraldo, I want your take on this. What does it mean to Eric Adams as a Democrat in New York City if he takes a deal to subvert the justice process from Donald Trump?
I think it's quite damaging to him as a candidate.
Hold on, Geraldo. Let Paul go and then you go.
Yeah, I think it's very damaging to him as a candidate. I mean, the voters may say, hey, listen, anybody has to go along with a dismissal of a criminal case against them. But nonetheless, Trump's not popular in New York City for the most part. And Adams has been fairly unpopular lately. So I can't see how this could help his campaign. I think it'll hurt his campaign.
Well, the way
there's only one thing,
is
Paul,
he
with
says.
respect.
All right, go ahead, Geraldo. Let me hear your point.
My point is simply this. You say how unpopular Adams and Trump are. How about how unpopular undocumented immigrants in New York have become, particularly those on the lower end of the social economic spectrum? New Yorkers are fed up. They're frightened. They're tired of the obstacle course they have to walk when they go past the Roosevelt Hotel, where I took the bar exam. It's this is an issue. Adams saw it. Maybe he had the basest, most self-serving motive possible to embrace this issue and embrace the foremost proponent of the fight against illegal immigration, President Trump, then candidate Trump. Whatever it is, now, I'm glad about this result. And just say very briefly, what will determine whether or not Adams benefits or is held to task by the voters in New York is who exactly the federal immigration authorities go after. If they go after, as they announced that they intend to do, criminals, violent people, gang members, and so forth, Adams skates. If, however, they go after Juan and Maria, who work as babysitters or cooking hamburgers or mowing lawns in springtime, then I think Adams suffers, and then I think Adams pays the price. That's why.
I think Adams is in a very tough place. Is it easy to say, as Paul just did, hey, look, you got to take the dismissal? I don't know. Politically, I felt the same way about Tony Fauci getting the pardon. I know Tony Fauci, and I know he feels that he has nothing to be pardoned for. And when you accept a pardon, you're tacitly saying you needed it. I feel the same way about Adams, in that there's a strong political inclination. I'd be like, no, I'm going to fight it. I don't need any, especially of all people, Trump. As a Democrat in New York City, I do not need him to come to my rescue.
You don't fight.
But look,
you don't fight federal charges that way. You don't.
I understand.
You're up against the federal government. You don't. It's not like you're up against some hicktown DA.
I totally understand. I'm just saying politically, Geraldo. You're thinking legally and practically. I'm talking politics. And in New York City politics, perception is reality. And you are taking a gift from a man who's like the equivalent of Voldemort. Now, the migrant issue, I don't even see as the central issue. But if it is, Adams has a two-step on that, Geraldo, which is, one, you were in charge when you heard they were coming. Why didn't you have a plan other than to go to Biden and then complain about it? He's going to have to campaign on that. If he decides to run, by the way, I don't think this plan, this deal makes him have to run. But I will say one other thing, Paul. If I'm his lawyer, I'm going back to them and say, whoa, what is this review thing later on? If you're dismissing it, tell them that's it. And I don't want them to come after me for it again.
They're throwing other crazy things into it, too. You know, there's a reference to the Hyde Amendment in a letter that has come from the Justice Department. So does Adams have to take a position opposing federal funding of abortions in New York in order for this to go through? We're going to hear a lot more about this tomorrow when we get the details
if he accepts
of what they're trying to squeeze out of Adams here.
If he accepts it, Geraldo, this is one caveat I'll put in there. And I am not in any way trying to ascribe any animus to the offer. But what Paul just said, Geraldo, we both know in all the reporting we've done about when you take a deal from somebody with power, you now are owned by them. And with that language in that letter, you know they can review this case again after the election. What do you do if you're Adams and they come asking for something else, Geraldo?
Well, it obviously depends on if he wins or not, but I also want to re-emphasize, if you can get away from a federal indictment, a 5-count indictment.
But at what price?
That's got years and years in prison and everything else. That's what is in your future if you fight them. Then if you get out with honor, I think that so far he has honor. Let's see how the Department of Homeland Security handles this issue. If they screw it up, then Adams suffers as a result. But the most intriguing question politically is Andrew Cuomo versus Eric Adams. To me, that's the clash of the Titans. I think that's an amazing race.
Who runs against them is a third-level consideration, okay? Because what are they going to ask in exchange for this? The idea that Trump is doing it because he has feelings about justice, I don't buy it. And they have him on the hook because the language of the thing says they can review it after the election. So they come and ask you about the Hyde Amendment or they ask you about anything. Can you say no? Is this any different than if a member of one of the 5 families gave you a loan? That's the only thing you have to be careful with politically. We'll see how it plays out.
And wait till Damian Williams jumps into the race. The honest prior.
He retired. Damian Williams. Damian Williams is out.
There's been a lot of talk
Damian
about
Williams, I think, left the office last month.
Yeah,
maybe Dan Goldman may want to run.
He wants to run. Talk about someone who wants to run for president. That guy.
Yeah, well, he does. Yeah. So maybe the stepping stone for him is mayor of New York.
Damian Williams, but this hurts him. This makes him look like he did something wrong. So he's going to have to get into politics a little bit sooner. But we'll see. Thank you guys for chewing on this. I appreciate the mastication and the prognostication. Paul Callan and Geraldo Rivera. Thank you both. The break is 4 minutes and 35 seconds. I'm telling you, you got to look at that story. That's going to be a really interesting, evolving dynamic. And again, let me say something to you that should be really obvious, okay? Anytime anybody with the name Cuomo runs for anything, I'm for them. I love my brother and I care about him. And I'm not going to cover the mayoral race. What this means, though, for what could happen in the race, that's fodder for better minds. And that's what you get here. Trump and Elon Musk are moving ahead with their plan on the DOE. Shutting it down is the language. I don't buy it. I don't think they can, okay? We're doing something here that you're not going to see everywhere else. Lawmakers from both sides talking about what should be happening here. The force of nature herself, Maxine Waters, and one of Trump's strongest supporters on the right discuss what should happen at the DOE.
Primetime.
We welcome you to the Fairish Network on television.
Fair.
So that was a fair way to sum up how you're feeling about this.
Fearless.
And nobody gets away with talking points on this show.
Predictably unpredictable.
And we never back down from the truth.
Primetime won't know what hit it.
Things just got real.
New time, same Leland. Coming to Primetime tonight at a new time, 9 Eastern, only on NewsNation.
Why does Elon Musk want to get rid of all of this? Because he's a thief. He's a gangster. So, Elon, come here and face us. Bring your ass on over here. Come on over here and face us.
I watched some of these horrible people like Maxine Waters, real sleaze.
What a level of dialogue we got going these days. So, the DOE, let's bring in left and right and see if we can get to reasonable about the best way to move forward. California, member of Congress, Democrat Maxine Waters, and Republican member of Congress from Montana, Ryan Zinke. It's good to see you, Ryan. It's been a minute. Maxine, always a pleasure. Let's see if we can just stipulate to one thing. I have not found a constitutional expert yet who says that the executive on their own can shut down an agency. If Congress funds it, Ryan and Maxine, you guys have to be part of its abolition. So I don't think that what's on the table is the president getting rid of the DOE. I don't believe he can without an act of Congress. So if we can stipulate to that, let's now debate what should happen right now. And Ryan, I'll start with you. What do you believe this is about in terms of what happens to the DOE?
Well, one is a campaign promise and look at the education as a whole across America. How well are we doing? We're failing. And a lot of the sentiment is why are we failing? Because some constricted formula from Washington, D.C., when it goes out to Montana, as an example, it doesn't quite fit. As we do believe in local control of our education system. And then you mentioned earlier about the student loans. Remember, prior to Obamacare, the student loans were out there, but the student loans had a plus account. And when we put together Obamacare, we rated every account, and one of those accounts was student loans. So why should we not go back and put student loans in another department? But I do agree, look, in some cases, our government, it's not a matter of putting more money in or taking money out. It's a matter of structure and reorganizing so we can deliver better education, so we can deliver better health care. But right now, many of these systems that have been created over time, it's time to review them. And lastly, I'll say this real quickly, is you're seeing a pushback about funds and grants. There should be a pushback. You and I should have that debate, whether a grant for Guatemalan sex change is worthy or not. I would love to have the debate, but we should never debate whether the grant should be, one, accountable and transparent. And so when we don't know the money, where the money is going, that's a problem. And on that basis, it should be bipartisan. Let's have transparency and figure out where the money's going.
Maxine, you don't have a happy look on your face right now, but I do know you as a warrior in terms of wanting to have the debate. Are you open, and is the Democratic caucus open to reviewing what the DOE or any agency does and making the case for more or less?
Well, let me say this. First of all, we have to be clear about what the Department of Education does and what does not do. First of all, the local communities, the states, the counties, the cities have the oversight and the operational responsibility for education. So it is localized. So why are they going after it? The Department of Education basically has a responsibility for student loans and something to deal with supplying Title I funds, that's supplying funds to those communities where you have little support from the revenue, little support from the overall community, because they're poor communities. You have families that are working every day, many of them minimum wage. They don't have time to put into the children what maybe richer families who have childcare and all of that. So Title I is what they're really after. They want to get rid of Title I with all of the money that goes to, and this is urban and rural. And the rural community.
Yeah, but Maxine,
Yes.
That's
we have
really
the
not the
opportunity.
case, Maxine.
You got Ryan right here. So Ryan, Title I, just for people at home, real quick. When you have a population where it's about at 40%, where they can't pay a certain amount, there's a threshold amount, that's when the federal grants come in to help localities deal with educating that population, and then states would have to make up that money if you got rid of the DOE giving those funds. Are you against Title I?
No, there's a lot of programs that make a difference that we need to protect, but it's also how you administer the execution of it. Isn't it better a lot of times to have a block grant and give it to the state? Who knows? I mean, I love Maxine, but you've never been to Whitefish, Montana, or a reservation, and I can tell you, they know how to distribute education dollars, and sometimes these dollars from the federal government come with catches. You have to do this, but they don't pay for it all. So at the end of the day, what I'm sure Maxine and I both appreciate is we want great education in this country. I think, do we need the Department of Education to do it? I think you could probably have the states more involved with it and spend less money up front in the headquarters, more money on the front line.
Let me tell you,
Maxine,
about the history of the states. When we leave it up to the states for something like Title I, oftentimes the poorest people, minorities, do not get treated fairly. Historically, we had to do everything that we could possibly do to get children educated who were discriminated against, communities that didn't want them, local communities who differ in the way that they deal with certain populations.
But Maxine, Ryan said programs like Titles 1, 6, and 9, which is poverty, which is race, and which is gender, that those policies against discrimination are things that shouldn't get thrown outside the hyperbole of get rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah, but he never said he supported Title I. He didn't say he supported Title I.
Of course
Ryan,
I do.
Do you support Title I, 6, and 9?
There are communities that need help. But who is best to deliver the care? Is it a federal government, one size all, or you want to give some ability to innovate on the front line? Look, I'm a Naval Special Warfare Commander, a SEAL. I can tell you the headquarters is not where battles are fought. Go to the front line.
If you want to talk about how to get the two sides together, you don't start off by closing down the Department of Education.
But Ryan's not saying he wants to close it down. See, I think that's Trump hyperbole. And that's a sales pitch, like Ryan started to say.
We don't know that.
Well,
Trump is capable.
But look, you'll see what Congress does with it, Maxine. You got to take people who act in good faith. You got to take people.
And I will say this.
If you want to negotiate,
and I will say this: anger itself, bringing anger into the discussion.
Hold on. One at a time.
How to get together? If you want to negotiate, you don't start with shutting something down. You start with saying, "I want to negotiate." He hasn't done that.
I get it.
He has moved on the Department of Education, on USAID, on Treasury, go on and on.
You're right.
That's no way to get along with anybody.
You are right. But Ryan,
two things.
Just because Trump says it doesn't mean you have to do it. Last word to you.
Well, look.
I mean, I don't know
this
how
is having anger.
Maxine, let me let Ryan get in, please. Go ahead.
Having anger in the discussion is a distraction. If we want to really solve things, let's get the anger out of it. Let's not incite violence. Let's not say that Congress somehow is, people owe their salaries to Congress. You know who we owe the salaries to? The taxpayer. And I think in this case, the taxpayer wants to know what we spend is a good deal, and are we getting it done? So I think we can talk over and be nice about it.
But listen, I'll be honest with you, Maxine.
He threatened. He talks about wanting revenge. You don't get any angrier than that. Let's not pass.
There's no question.
He has directed his anger toward the Department of Justice.
Yes, he has. There's no question.
Who lawfully did the investigation on him. Okay.
Maxine, this is all I'm saying. This is all I'm saying. I'm not here to debate, and neither is Ryan, frankly, just to give him a break, what Trump says. We had an election, okay? He won. The question is now, how can Congress continue to do its job in a way that actually makes a difference in the problems that everybody agreed in this election? They didn't agree on what the right way was to fix it, but that election is done. And what I'm saying is, even this conversation, it's better than where we were. So
no,
you're right.
Let me tell you,
threatening isn't the way to do it, Maxine.
We elected, we, not me, but those people who elected Trump did not elect Elon Musk, who's running this government, who is taking his
to be fair, in the executive branch, to be fair, in the executive branch, there's only been two people elected. That's the president and the vice president. Everyone else in the executive branch is not elected.
He sold himself to Elon Musk.
That is true. Don't do that.
$1 million that he gave to Trump, he sold it.
That is true.
Elon Musk,
look, Maxine.
You can't even negotiate with someone who is not elected, who is working in the dark of night.
That's
and
true.
On the weekends, going into
that's
our
why I invited
privacy information.
Maxine, but that's why I invited Ryan, not Elon. Okay, you're not going to negotiate with him. I don't think you should have to, and I don't think Ryan wants you to. That's all I'm saying.
He does not respond to you. You can't get him on. And Trump is irrelevant, and Elon is going about the business of running this country.
I can go back to, you got to get the anger out of it. If we want to solve things, remove the anger and focus on what we can do and what we should do.
I'm with you, and I'm here for the conversation at all times. Look, you had the election. I get where you're coming from on it, Maxine. I could get Elon on the show. I just don't know what purpose it serves. But I think I'm much better suited. He's not running the country. He's not running the country. He's running his mouth. There's a big difference. Maxine, I got to jump. We'll continue this conversation as the issues come up specifically. If nothing else, we know the DOE is not going to go away. It's about what's going to be funded and what isn't and how, and I hope you guys are part of it. Ryan Zinke,
great to see you, and we'll do it again. Maxine, I'll see you on the floor.
See you
Ryan, you may be a SEAL, but you were never trained to take on any Maxine Waters. I'll tell you that right now. Take care of both of you.
I tell you what, it's a lot easier being a SEAL commander than it is a congressman.
Yes. A lot easier being a SEAL commander than a congressman, says Ryan Zinke, and he's probably right. All right. Look, I'll tell you, they're talking over each other. There's obviously hostilities, but I'll tell you something. It's better to do it this way than to have them in a vacuum. Trust me. Donald Trump says if Hamas doesn't turn over all the hostages, all hell's going to break loose. What does that mean? Next. By a news anchor before. I have 4.5 minutes of program time left in 3 blocks because I got to get my commercials in because I went too long because of all the news and wanting those 2 Congress members to talk to each other, but it kind of went sideways. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to talk about what happened or didn't happen with the peace deal between Israel and Hamas. First, I have Aaron David Miller. I'm going to have him discuss what we know happened or didn't happen. I'm going to give him about 1.5 minutes. I'm going to go to break. I'm going to come back. I'm going to get the competing interest, although Aaron's fair to both sides, from Arwa Damon about what she believes happened with the aid and what has to happen next. And then I'll tie it together in the last block. That's how I'll do it to give you value while estimating time. So, Aaron, thank you very much for playing along here.
Always
Aaron
a pleasure,
David
Chris.
Miller. Do you believe that Israel compromised this deal by not delivering aid? And what does it mean for all hell breaking out, according to President Trump?
Look, Hamas and Israel have traded violations, some of which are accurate, some are not, since the beginning of the ceasefire. I think Hamas's threat not to release hostages were directly tied to the president's comments, and terrorist organization as they are notwithstanding, and to the fact that they have no conviction whatsoever that Netanyahu or Trump is serious about moving from phase 1 to phase 2. That's what you got. And now the president of the United States decided that he's going to say, oh, hell's going to break loose. I mean, what does that actually mean, Chris? I mean, look at the last 15 months. Gaza is hell. And all he's done, I think, is embolden the Israelis and provide Netanyahu with a green light to do what I think he wants to do, which is resume the war.
So you think that Hamas is messing with the deal because of what Trump said about the Gaza Riviera, and that his words, all hell's going to break loose, doesn't mean anything to them?
Right. It's untethered from reality. They may end up releasing the 3 that they're committed to do so. I suspect there's a reasonable chance, Chris, that this exchange on Saturday go forward. But the president's threats are empty and meaningless, and they're frankly untethered from reality, like his Gaza comments. I know you got to go.
I love you and thank you.
We'll do it again.
I'll make it up for you another time. Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate you. All right, I'm going to take a break. Arwa Damon has spent so much time on the ground there and understands what Trump's words meant and whether they are the catalyst for the next phase of conflict. Arwa Damon with why that could be next.
Why can't we say we're the best home shopping site?
Because while true, you just can't say that legally.
So I can't say Homes.com is the best?
No.
What if we jumbled up the words?
Homes best is com.the.
No.
What if we said it in Spanish?
Homes.com es el mejor.
No.
What if we whispered it?
Homes.com is the best.
No.
Fine. What if he said it?
Homes.com. It's the best.
Mr. Freeman, I'm sorry, but we can't say that.
Say what?
Homes.com is the best.
Aha.
Homes.com.
It's the best.
Let's bring in Arwa Damon, whose group INARA. You want to help the kids who've been affected by the war? INARA. Give money there. She's been on the ground in Gaza. She's been in the region covering it for many years, and she's my friend. Arwa, thank you very much. The impact of him saying we're going to own Gaza, then the next thing we know, Hamas is upset about the deal and saying it's been violated. Trump says all hell will break out if you don't deliver the hostages. What do you think's going on?
I think that there is a lot of psychological manipulation that is taking place here, and Gazans themselves, and I was, messaging back and forth with a bunch of people who I know there, they are freaking out. The thought that they could go back to living with that same sort of primal fear that they lived under for 15 months with Israeli fighter jets bombing at will, that restarting, it's too much for their psyche to be able to handle. I mean, yes, some of what Hamas is saying in terms of humanitarian assistance not really getting in, it is very true, because if you look at the numbers, 600 trucks were getting in the first half of the period of time when the ceasefire began. That then dipped to 330. There are over 1 million people who don't have adequate access to shelter. You can buy a bar of chocolate on the market in Gaza right now, but you can't, take your kid to a functioning hospital. But the thing is, and this is what I think really needs to be the focus, is just how both sides are manipulating the populations. And the notion that somehow, rendering Gaza to hell is going to be the solution, an even bigger hell than it already is. It's really hard to follow that logic, because whatever Israel and the U.S. do to Gaza, they are doing to the hostages themselves. And it's about time that we recognize that people of Gaza are just as human as the rest of us and stop subjecting them to this madness.
Arwa, points well made and succinctly. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, and we'll continue it when we see what happens next. We'll be right back with Leland Vittert, who covered the region and knows the dynamic very well. Next.